Have you ever had a wonderful idea with Linux and really wanted to test it out, but you're limited on time and you've looked at trying to set up VirtualBox or setting up a Hyper-V VM or looking at having to try to grab a Raspberry Pi and get it set up, and all of those just feel like too much work, and that even signing into a web console like for Amazon Web Services and going and setting up an instance might take too much time for you to actually get your VM up and running as those ideas come into place. Well, one wonderful solution for that is scripting your EC2 instances with PowerShell and getting them from not even started to actually into an SSH session all in a single script. And we can actually do that. So if you join me and look at PowerShell here on your screen, we are going to be using some code from our last tutorial on how to start and stop an EC2 instance within AWS. And to get started here, where you will see that code from our last lesson is right here under this new EC2 instance option that we have within PowerShell. So this is the exact same thing. All we have changed from that tutorial is we now have the key name as a variable. And what we are going to do is assign that to a new instance within EC2, and we're just going to assign that to a PowerShell variable called newInstance. So after we have assigned that variable, what we are going to do is get the status of the EC2 instance that is running, and we want to get the instance value. So we're looking to find the instance ID, and we're doing that because when the EC2 instance first starts, it does not give us the public IP and public DNS name right away. And so we need to just grab the instance ID so then we can look up the public DNS and the public IP address afterwards. And then what we're going to do here is hop into a do-while loop. So as we get the EC2 instance started, what we're going to do is hop into this loop and say if the EC2 status is running, by using Get-EC2Instance.Status, and we're going to get the instance status value of, and then in that case that it is running, we're going to write to the host, so write to our console, saying EC2 instance is running. And then we're going to break out of this do while loop. And if it does not equate to running because it's still getting started, we're going to sleep for 1 second, and then we are going to add another digit to our variable of I, and then we're going to write to the host saying that the EC2 status is not running. Let me fix my English here as we go along. And then we're going to throw a comma in here, and we're going to say attempt I out of number. So we're saying 1 out of something or 2 out of something. And then we're going to do that as long as I is less than number. So we're first setting up those variables. I is going to be 0 and number is going to be 60. And so we're saying basically in a rough sense that try this for about 60 seconds, and if you don't connect, then we're going to stop the do while loop. And we're just going to do that so that way we don't run into a endless loop in the do while loop. So once we either hit 60 seconds or the EC2 instance is running, we'll break out of that loop. Note if we break out of the loop and the instance is not running, the rest of the script will likely fail. So adjust these numbers as much as you would like to. I have found that using this specific new EC2 instance option set that we have here, that it takes about 22 to 25 seconds to get the EC2 instance up and running that we were looking for. So 60 seconds works great for me, but please do your testing and see what works for you. So after we know that our EC2 instance is running, we need to now get that public DNS name. So we're going to get all of our active EC2 instances, and then we're going to say where the object has an IP address. So we're doing that through saying it in the negative. We're saying where it has null or white space, We do not want that. So we want public IP addresses that exist. And then we are going to select the public DNS name. We are going to grab the first one because hopefully we only have one instance running, but this will ensure that we just grab the first instance and grab the public DNS name. From there, we are going to build a connection string to connect into EC2. So that gives us the variable of connect to EC2. And then we are going to say SSH-I space, and then we're going to give it the key name that we gave it earlier, which is Linux in this case. And then we are going to add .pim, since that's the full file extension. And then we are going to use this -o, and the reason we're doing this is so normally when you first SSH to a machine, it says, do you trust this fingerprint? And the strict host key checking no option will just override that and automatically say yes to it and move it into our known connections folder. And so that way we don't have to worry about any prompts as we're going through this process. And then we are going to connect using Ubuntu. Note that this might change depending on which flavor of Linux you're using. The AMI that we have listed here is Ubuntu, so feel free to adjust that if you're using a different flavor of Linux that uses a different login. And then and then the public DNS name that we have pulled. And then from there, we are going to write that to the host just so we can see what that connection string is. And then we are going to invoke the expression connect to EC2. So, and then the first thing also to note here is at the very beginning of the script, we changed directory. And the reason we're doing that is just so we are moved into the directory that contains our PIM file. So that is what this key location option is. If your key location is in your C users and then whatever your username is, and that is where you have your PIM file, that will be fine. But if it is not in that location, then you will need to change directories to the directory where your PIM file is located as a first step. So this is optional, but just make sure you are in the proper directory with your PIM file. So we'll now run this script. And what we'll see happen here shortly is we'll see that it's attempting to connect to the EC2 instance, so it's saying it's not running. And it's going to do this for probably about anywhere in the 22 to 25 second range. You'll see here at about 10 seconds. And EC2 is running. This gives us our string. Oh, and we got a connection refused. So let's just try this one more time here. Try to invoke this expression. So it looks like it may have ran into a little issue with the initial SSH. So that is part of why we are writing this to the line, is you could simply just copy and paste this string again into your console, but that gets you into an SSH section. Currently, my PowerShell has been having an issue in running an ISE that it doesn't actually get me the terminal line. So I am going to grab this SSH string, and we are going to open just a standard PowerShell window here. And I'm going to move that over on top of our session. And we're going to cd to documents, because once again, that's where that Linux file is, or PIM file is. And then we're going to run that SSH option. And now we're into the terminal and we are good to go. So now that you can see that, let's hop back over to AWS so you can see what we have in AWS here. So you'll see we have that instance running. And then just to bring things full circle, what we're ultimately doing is building the connection string that you see here within AWS. So SSH-I, Linux, PIM, Ubuntu at that location. So if we now go back and look at our Linux string that we had built here, you'll see that we have SSH-I Linux PIM, so that's the same setup. And then we're using this -O option, which is non-existent here, but then we're using that same Ubuntu connect to this remote computer at AWS. So that is how we get in. And then now if we do something like a ls/lh, that'll give us our directory, or dir, yeah, it just shows us where we're at, and we can go from there. So you can start testing your Linux ideas effectively and quickly using your EC2 instance that you connected to via PowerShell. I hope that you find this helpful. I will copy the script that I have put together into the description of this so you can do it yourself as well. Hope that you have a wonderful day, and please take a look at my prior video if you have any questions about how to start or stop your EC2 instance.